the Eskom level, and that sent a very positive message. We're confronted by an Eskom challenge once again. But this time round, we have taken steps to address the challenge that we're facing in Eskom in terms of the process that we are involved in. We put together a task team that met with me and Minister Pravin Gordhan yesterday, and they will continue with a number of other meetings. And that task team is working feverishly to ensure that we come up with proposals. And they've been working together with the board, with management, and a number of interesting ideas are being put on the table to see how best we can help to stabilize Eskom and to determine a better path for Eskom going forward. So we are here again, and Eskom is still a big challenge, but this time I think we can say there is some glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel in terms of what we need to do with Eskom. They're facing huge challenges, funding challenges. Now they want also to get a new tariff, and there's a huge debate that's going on, but we will be addressing all those issues. So we can, in a way, say Eskom is being handled. We can put it on the side. We don't need to be carrying that burden all the way to Davos with us. One of the positive things that we also started last year, precisely at this type of forum, was to renew engagement between government and business. And that did behove us well, because through the course of the year, we were able, even past my election as president, we're able to engage with one another on a number of fronts. And we have continued with that type of engagement. And so this pre-Davos type of get-together does yield wonderful benefits. And I would be very interested, once I sit down and shut up, to hear what some of the thoughts are, some of the views are, so that we can see how best some of your new thoughts post your Christmas period are. The good thing is that collaboration between government and business is going extremely well. It is possibly at a very rich level, and much as we have challenges, we are dealing with the various challenges. And some of those challenges are just basically how we can generate more stronger economic growth in our economy. During the course of the year, as the business community, and indeed also as Labour, you were able to raise quite a number of issues that we needed to address. And those issues are being addressed. We are proceeding with addressing a lot of issues. We're stabilizing a number of government institutions. The National Prosecutions Authority now has a new head who will be starting shortly, and we expect that we will start seeing quite a number of positive results out of the NPA. SARS, the applications are in, and we will now be evaluating those applications, and a new SARS commissioner will be chosen, and we're stabilizing quite a number of other institutions. The Zondo Commission continues with its work and is helping us to get to the depth of what state capture was all about, and to make sure that we will not ever have a state capture process in our country again. So a number of all those issues have been a result of being able to work together. We held a very successful investment conference, which we will want to repeat towards the end of the year. And so the richness of the collaboration between business and government is what we can showcase when we get to Davos, because we will be able to tell the world, the investing world, that the collaboration between government, business and labor and communities is going on extremely well, and we're able to openly and honestly touch on a number of important issues, some of which have a policy nature and others in terms of just strengthening how government should help to guide the economy going forward. And dealing with corruption is one of the key resolves that we have, and we intend to carry on with that work. The governing party has just published its election manifesto. It is a document that is going to add to a number of debating issues that may well be raised even at Davos and a number of other places. Government ministers will be on hand to answer whatever questions that may arise out of that. My take is that we're going to Davos on a firm footing, and all I would like to say is that our engagements in Davos, whoever we engage with, should be engagements that are based on putting a very positive message to the world, to the investing world, because indeed we do have a fairly positive message. We've been building and stabilizing the platform. The platform is not a burning platform any longer. The platform is getting stronger, and I guess what we now need to do is to start the process of putting up the buildings so that we can generate further growth in our economy, and we should not be discouraged by the lackluster economic growth that has been presaged by the World Bank and others. We should be fairly positive, because the determination to make sure that our economy grows is there, and I was delighted at the investment conference to see so many of our corporations being very positively minded about our economy and the commitments they made, and also the message that we got that that conference should be repeated later this year, because we need to build on that momentum to put South Africa on the map, not only for international investors, but also for ourselves, that we should focus on our economy. And on government side, we will continue to heed some of the calls that you make as business, some of the suggestions that you put forward. We will heed those, and we will seek to do what is best for the Republic of South Africa and for stabilizing our economy and growing the economy of our country. And so I believe that we are on a good roll. The outcomes as the end of the Job Summit are another really outstanding sign of collaboration between the key role players in our economy. The magnitude of the commitments and the interventions that were made is what we now need to work on, to implement. And this is the positive message that we can carry out, take to the world and say, as South Africans, one of the strong things that we are doing is being able to work together despite the challenges that we are facing. Post Davos, I'll be proceeding to lead a number of government officials and ministers to India. We're going for a state visit to India, and that too, I'm sure, will go well. So with those few words, I think we are all poised to proceed to Davos in a fairly strong manner. And if there are issues that we need to touch on and discuss now, I'll be welcome to hear some of the thoughts, the suggestions, as we did last year. And so this should then be a forum where we are able to exchange some thoughts, some views. But once again, once we get to Davos, we close ranks and we speak with one voice, one country, one message, and one people. And that's precisely, I guess, what we expect of one another. Last year, that went very well, including the dinner that we had, and I'm looking once more forward to that wonderful dinner that we had. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President.
And that President Cyril Ramaphosa addressing Team South Africa, who will be going to Davos in Switzerland for the World Economic Forum. And of course, the message that he puts out there is that Team South Africa will go to that World Economic Forum meeting speaking with one voice. And it's a positive message that they are taking to Davos that outlines a collaboration between government, business, and of course, the people of South Africa. And also touches there on Eskom, saying that a task team has been appointed and they are tasked with turning things around there in collaboration with the board. Also continued engagements with business and seeing that this seems to be paying off. And a new SARS commissioner will be appointed, although no further detail as to when that may be. The Zondo Commission he also touched on, saying this is basically showing us the extent of state capture and repeating the investor conference that was held last year, one of the plans on the president's diary, perhaps a repeat of that. And it's going to be interesting to see the greater message around messages of illicit cash flow from South Africa. What is the government going to do with this? Are they going to address this at the World Economic Forum? And perhaps also something that the president has touched on in recent times, and that is, of course, a greater free trade across the African continent. So this is the message that President Cyril Ramaphosa wants to engage those at Rosebank on ahead of Team South Africa's departure for the World Economic Forum in Davos. It's time.
Can we open quick Q&A? And we should be, ministers are here. Minister Mboweni is here also, he just arrived. We will be, please introduce yourself and tell us which company or organization or you come from, and then you can. I see already there's one question here. Hey, yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much, Dondo, and thank you very much, Mr. President. My name is Nonkululeko Nyembezi from the JSE, and I agree with your comments. We are on a much stronger footing this year than last, and even stronger than a couple of years ago. I think it's true that right through our troubles, to give it a name, we continually reinforce the message that we will pull through whatever turbulence because of the strength of our institutions. This was a major plank on which certainly the business community built its defense of the RAM. So against that background, I would like to hear how you'd like us to position some of the comments about the Reserve Bank coming out of the ANC conference. The independence of that institution has been quite a key part of that whole institutional framework. So if you start to make the argument that the mandate will not change, well, it begs the question, why change anything then? It's hard to wrap your mind around why the need to tinker with that.
Thank you. We'll take one more, and then there's one here. The mic here. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. President, for the address. I think from our perspective, it's Rob Shooter from MTN Group. My experience of Davos last year is it's very much a competition between emerging market economies to attract investment. And I do think we are much better placed this year to make our investment case. I think the work that was done for the investment conference has really crisped up all the reasons why it's important and why South Africa is a great investment destination. So I think that's very helpful. My interaction with international investors in the last few months, the big questions on their minds for South Africa are firstly the state of the SOEs, particularly Eskom. There's a lot of concern about the public finances of the large SOEs. Still a lot of questions on land reform. And I think thirdly, policy certainty, particularly in our industry, telecommunications industry, as we prepare for the fourth industrial revolution, to make sure that we've got the right policy framework. So I think it would be good if we had, let's say, a common narrative on how we are going to respond to these questions. I very much agree that when we go to Davos, it's one team, selling the South African story. So it's good if we can be as aligned as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
I was saying to my sister Nku Nyembezi, why is she asking difficult questions? She says it's her job. But it isn't a difficult question at all, the question on the Reserve Bank. What you will have heard and read is a paragraph from the governing party where it expressed a wish and an aspiration, acknowledging that the Reserve Bank is independent. Its independence is sacrosanct, and that there is no intention whatsoever to temper, even to tinker with the independence of the central bank. The wish that is expressed is, as it goes ahead with its monetary policy machinations and policy directives and decisions, it should also keep an eye on the issue of employment. Now, you will be pleased to know that the Reserve Bank will tell you that is precisely what they also focus on. And they will tell you, if I was the governor of the Reserve Bank, and we've got the 8th governor of the Reserve Bank here as Minister of Finance, they will tell you that that's precisely what we focus on as we go on with our monetary policy type of work. So there shouldn't be anything that alarms anyone. It would be alarming if the governing party had said, we want to re-examine the mandate of the Reserve Bank. That would have been alarming, but the wish, the aspirational message that is being put across is, we would, dear Reserve Bank, as you come up with your monetary policy statements and decisions, keep an eye on employment. The governing party is essentially saying, we've got a burning platform with regard to employment, and we would like everyone to focus on the creation of jobs. And clearly there is nothing wrong with that. The same thing is being debated in other places in the world, even in Europe, even in the United States. People keep on expressing their wishes. But as long as we are clear, and this I can say without any equivocation, the independence, the standing, and the role of the Reserve Bank is sacrosanct. It will remain independent, as clearly stated in our Constitution. So there should be no debate about that. So as people say we would like more employment, we should not be alarmed, and in fact we should say, we agree with you. We would like more employment, and all of us, in whatever we do, should keep an eye and focus on that. Rob Shooter, you are absolutely right. Our journey to Davos is really to go and mobilize investments for our country. We are competing with other emerging markets, and we want South Africa to be well positioned. And that's precisely what takes us to Davos, because it's an oasis of foreign investment. And that's where we want to be seen to be playing. And South Africa has a place of some pride. In Davos, we are recognized, accepted as being a serious player, and some of our countrymen and women also play roles in the structures of Davos, and that is to be welcomed. So we've got to be there, and when we go, we must speak with one language and have the same message. And yes, we should also be able to articulate a message that is coherent on, say, land reform. Now, if you go through the manifesto of the governing party, you will see that the issue of land reform is clearly and well articulated. The ANC conference, having taken a decision a year ago, is there anyone here kind enough to give me some water? I woke up with a bad throat. Thank you so much. Now, the ANC conference took a decision, which decision has been debated quite extensively across the length and the breadth of the country. And in some ways, the debate and the discussions seemed to be dividing the nation. But it was a widespread discussion issue, which involved all sectors of society, people in urban areas and rural areas, both rich and poor, landowners and non-landowners. And in the end, the report has now been submitted to Parliament, and Parliament has now taken a decision that, yes, the Constitution should be amended. And even that issue of amending the Constitution is just really so that we all understand, it's just to make it abundantly clear that the issue of expropriation of land without compensation has always been part of the constitutional construct that we have. And it is just to make it clear. Now, the manifesto of the governing party has even taken it further. The governing party has now tabled a bill, the expropriation bill, which is going to be debated in Parliament. And if you read that expropriation bill very carefully, you will see how the expropriation process will take place, the various steps and measures that will be taken, and which land will be liable for that type of expropriation. And already the bill is saying we are going to be looking at, state-owned land, land that is owned by various sectors of the government, abandoned land, and land that is not being used. And so categorization of the land that could be liable for expropriation is then set out, and a process. And the manifesto of the governing party goes further to say, we are going, as we go on with land reform, and we will be utilizing the expropriation of land without compensation as one of the measures that can be used. And this is not whole scale. This is not what people have always feared, that there's going to be, whole scale, vengeful type of expropriation of land. It is going to be done in line with the decision that was taken at Nasrec. And the decision at Nasrec was very clear, that as you proceed with this process of land reform, take care that, one, agricultural production must not be reduced, food security must be assured, and it must lead to greater growth of the economy. It must not negatively impact the economy. So you've got a constellation of really wonderful initiatives that can be taken on land. And in the end, the Freedom Charter said the land shall be shared amongst those who work it. So there is no vengeance, there is no vengeful intent on the issue of land. What it has succeeded to do, and this is what I've also been explaining to all and sundry and even people who don't live here, what it has succeeded to do is to actually put the issue of land on the front of the national agenda. And the good yield that we've got out of this is that landowners, be they farmers, be they companies, are coming forward and saying, we now realize how important this is. We now have portions of land that we want to put in the pot of the land that can be made available to our people as a whole. But what it has also done, ladies and gentlemen, is to actually, if you like, light a fire under government to ensure that government speeds up the restitution process. Because huge tracts of land have been like lying at the bottom of the drawers without being paid any attention. Now the files are out. Attention is being paid to them. And we are doing and are going to do the land reform process in line with the constitution of our country. We will not depart from utilizing the clear precepts that are enshrined in our constitution to deal with land. One, at a political level, we will not allow land grabs. That is not going to happen. And the land reform process will not be underpinned by vengefulness, where out of vengefulness we go and grab land. It will be done in the most orderly manner, and it will be done on a collaborative basis. And this is part of our DNA. That's how we do things here in South Africa. The fact that a number of both international and, say, local companies made their commitments at the investment conference demonstrated to me that much as the land debate was going on, it was not a barrier. It wasn't a barrier because we've been able to give the necessary assurances. We are not going to cut our noses to spite our faces, but what we are going to do is to advance the interests of our people when it comes to the land issue. On policy certainty, Rob, we have said ad nauseum that we are going to address all the issues that militate against policy certainty. And we have started that process. And in some cases, there may be starts and stops. There may be challenges. One of those was on the visa regime. One of the business people who's here actually said to me, it's not working as well as you had announced. And I said, let us sit down and discuss it to see where there are gaps, where it's faltering, so that we address this, because the intention is quite clear. We want to clear the decks about visa challenges, and we want to open our country up for people who want to come as tourists, to want to come on work visas and visit as business people, but still have the necessary controls for safety in our country, or for security in our country. So on policy certainty, we are determined to address all the challenges. On the spectrum issue, that is being addressed. There may well be some wrinkles, and where there are wrinkles, we are saying let's sit down and address and iron out all those wrinkles. Remember that we are government, and government tends to move very slowly on a number of issues. But what I draw strength from is that we've got partners, we've got interlocutors, if you like, we've got fellow travelers who are willing and prepared to discuss matters with us. And it is in this spirit that I believe we should be addressing matters. Even on the Eskom issue, we're going to be engaging with many of you about the challenges that we are facing in Eskom. We are that type of government that one listens to, engages, and wants to build a very collaborative type of process. And this is precisely what I said when I became president, that where you might have felt as business and as key stakeholders in the country that the way to talk to government was closed and blocked, we're going to open all that. We're going to open so that we can engage and engage seriously, because my intention is to involve as many South Africans as possible in putting forward views, ideas about their country and what should happen in their country. We are not an empire. We are a republic, and a republic that wants to define itself as a country where South Africans can engage. And it is for that reason that we say we want an active citizenry. You cannot have an active citizenry if you're not going to engage. And this is what I believe is the strength that we have as South Africa. So let us engage even on areas where there's policy uncertainty. It is a journey. We're not going to be able to solve issues that impact on some areas of policy uncertainty immediately. But let's talk. Let us engage and let's raise those issues so that we can iron out all those difficulties. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Another round, Sim. Yeah. Softer, Sim. Oh, okay. No, carry on. It's fine. No, Sim, you said you'll come on. Okay, Bongani, carry on. Carry on.
Thank you, Donda. Thank you, Mr. President. My question is, with the globalization 4.0 upon us, I'm Bongani from Sasol, Bongani Mwababa. As the globalization 4.0, as companies, we are responding to it. But I think it's important that we have a national common agenda so that we approach it in a very coordinated way as companies, but also as government, so that there are no unintended consequences. Because some people might see the technology coming as a threat, but we should be asking ourselves, how can we see it as an opportunity? So we've got a lot of work to do, but I don't want to add another lump. But this is a wave coming at it. So either we ride the wave or it will sweep us away. So we need to deal with it.
It's Sim Chabalala from the Standard Bank Group. Mr. President, the first question would be, in the World Bank rankings on ease of doing business, we ranked number 82. What's the ambition for the next year, and what actions could we confidently speak about that would get us to maybe 60 in the short term? That's the first question. And related to that is, many of us, including Rob Shooter, have businesses in places like Nigeria, where the issues that relate to beggar thy neighbor are rearing their heads in the context of this deglobalization. What is our contribution to the reduction of beggar thy neighbor types of behavior, and in particular related to the competitiveness between these countries, and in particular in relation to Nigeria?
The president is not alone. He's with 5 or so, 6 ministers in the room. I know Minister Khadebe, he's got another engagement which is equally very critical, and he's going to be leaving soon. If you've got any question for him, you want to raise it, then he can deal with it and leave. If there's no question, then or Maria?
Maria Ramos from ABSA. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I was going to make raise two sets of issues. One is the fact that we are going to be in Davos, and I think Rob made this point earlier. We're going there, and Mr. President, you raised the point, we're going there as South Africa Inc. So for the immediate, the immediate issue is how do we present ourselves as South Africa Inc. And Nku already raised a very difficult issue. I think you've addressed it. I think we can also turn to the Constitution, because the Constitution actually sets out very clearly what the mandate of the Reserve Bank is. And I think being very clear about the fact that there is no threat to the independence of the Reserve Bank answers that question. But I think we also need to, if I may suggest, Mr. President, maybe change the language a little to what we have already done, because you had a program of work for last year. And it's going to be very important to say, this was the program, this is how we've delivered against that program, and there's a lot of delivery against that program. And action is important in this context. And then say, this is what the program of work is for this year. And there's some of this in this book, this booklet, but be very clear and decisive about that. And in the same way, be clear and decisive about what still needs to be done. Because this is a contest about competitiveness in that space. Those of us who've been there many, many years in a row know this is a fight about competitiveness. And in that space as well, it allows us to acknowledge what still needs to be done. Do we have a huge amount of work around Eskom? Yes. Are we going to, do we have some work? Do we know what comes next? Well, yes, we've got some actions, but we also have some more work to do. Is there a team working on it? Yes. Does it have some really smart people on it? Absolutely. So it's being clear and decisive about that. And then there are the other very big issues. This is about the contestation around globalization, the fourth industrial revolution, what it means, how we're investing. There's more medium-term issues and how we ready ourselves as a nation to deal with that. That's the second set of issues, and how we pitch up in a forum like Davos as a different kind of South Africa and as a different kind of African nation on this continent. Because I think unless we start changing this narrative, we constantly play into a nation dealing with this embattled sense, rather than stepping out, almost stepping out of that, to say we had a big investment conference, we're going to have another one this year, and watch us. We're inviting you to participate in this way. So it's that sense of not sort of arrogance, because that's not a good thing, but it's quiet confidence, because we've done a few things and we're going to do a lot more this year.
Thanks. Now let's pause there, and okay, you can come on, be last, and then we can take it around.
Thank you. It's Abigail Mukuba from African Rainbow Minerals. Similar to what Maria is already saying, I wanted to highlight that we have achieved a lot as a country with regards to the mining charter. We made a lot of airtime internationally for wrong reasons when there was uncertainty around the mining charter, and we need to use the platform to come back and say, look at how we have collaborated, this is how we've engaged, this is how the social, labor, government, everybody has sat and talked together until we achieved the outcome that we have. We have to shine the spotlight on ourselves. Nobody's going to do that, and we mustn't forget all the achievements that we have achieved in the last year or so. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Gu, I can see you are.
No, it's a question for Jen.
Okay. Okay.
If you look at the global risk report that WEF is publishing, I think today, out of the top 5 global risks as identified in the survey, I think climate change probably accounts for 3 of them. It could even be more. Now, President Ramaphosa will remember that he was a celebrity at Davos when he was talking about South Africa's renewable energy program, either the year before or last year, I can't remember now. So it would be good to get a sense of how we're going to be positioning ourselves for in medium term in that program. What is our ambition? Are we continuing with that? Because things do appear, at least from a distance, to have gone into some semblance of inactivity. So if Minister Khadebe could respond to that and just touch on the IRP process as well.
Can someone give Mr. Khadebe a mic, please? Thank you.
Thanks for the question. It is not accurate to say there's been inactivity on renewable energy. You'll recall when we were here last year in January, there was a total inactivity on renewable. There had been about 27 potential agreements that had been lying idle for the past 3 years. And on the 7th of April, I signed 27 agreements on renewable energy that has brought in 56 billion rand of investment into the South African economy. The draft IRP that we released at the end of August of 2018 indicates a very strong drive towards renewable energy going into the future. We are now at the point where we are analyzing all the public comments that have been made by the public as well as government departments. I can assure you that when Cabinet adopts the IRP 2019, it will also indicate a very strong showing for renewable energy. Solar, wind, hydro. Already, as we speak now, we've got a treaty between ourselves and the DRC where we have to offtake about 2,500 megawatts of electricity from the Grand Inga project. So I'm very satisfied that where we stand, we have removed that policy uncertainty that has characterized energy in the past 2 or 3 years in South Africa. So be rest assured, there's a lot of action. Just watch the space.
Thank you very much, Ms. Davis. While the president is sipping his tea, if you look at slide 9 and 10, we said they are sideline events. They are not they are actually, one would prefer that they become core of your program, those events, those 3 sessions that are there. That as you plan your program in Davos, make sure that most of you are part of those 3 engagements. One is a country strategy dialogue, which is very important. It used to be called BIG in the past, Business Interaction Group. Now here is an opportunity, and I remember a few years ago, Maria said, make sure that you bring 1 or 2 or 3 of your friends, global friends, to these meetings, to these engagements. Because it's not about you as South Africans. We can as well have those receptions here. So it's about inviting other people, making sure that those investors, the global companies that will be in Davos are part of these conversations in order for them to hear the story. So there's that country strategy dialogue, which WEF obviously put. There's also a nice reception that you are accustomed to, and please make sure that you're there on the 23rd at 6:30. And there's also the investment seminar. And I know there's a nice, again, session that Maria has put together as APSA, where, again, look out for it, make sure that you are part of it and support each other as this team and any other. If some of you have got specific events as South African companies that you are, let's know about it so that we then can inform others so that they can invite other people to come and participate in those. So that's quite important. Look at it like that. Because as we said, we are a team. Mr. President, I don't know how you want to take it. You've got a few. You can. Oh, Mr. Davis, it's your turn now.
Well, thanks very much. I think the President was asking me to address the question of the ease of doing business. I'll also just say a little bit, if you don't mind, about the globalization 4.0 and the technological revolution. But first of all, just to say that we, as Invest South Africa, has a partnership agreement with the World Bank on this matter, and it is intended to try to understand from the World Bank what we need to do in order to improve those rankings. So it's exactly that issue. And we have identified a number of issues, and some of them, I think, are interestingly coming at different levels of government. So, for example, the question of the starting of a business. In fact, we've made great improvements recently, in recent years, in registering a business, in partnership with the banks, in direct online. You can register a business in South Africa actually in moments, in minutes rather than hours. And also you can open a bank account, a business bank account, things like that. So that's not really the issue. The issue is that in order to get the business going, You also need a permit from the municipality to open an office or a factory or whatever it is. You may need this or that other permit depending on the nature of the business. And it's those kind of issues that hold us back. And it's those kind of issues which we are trying to address. I can say, since we're sitting in this city, that they use as a proxy, the World Bank, the performance of the city of Johannesburg. And there are quite a number of issues in the city of Johannesburg that we need to address and are trying to address. But I want to say that what we're doing is looking at all of these indexes and trying to improve our rankings. That's the approach that we've adopted. I wanted to simply say that I think the point about the technologies creating opportunities and looking at it that way is the way we need to look at it. But I think if we look at any of the stuff, including the stuff that comes out from Davos, they'll tell us that these technologies are a two-sided coin, that there will be benefits, but there can also be losers, and you can also have disadvantages, and you can lose out. And I think that's one of the issues about this conference about inclusivity. And I think it's very important that we understand that if we want the inclusive and beneficial outcome to override the negatives, we've got to do a number of things proactively ourselves. That's the point. And what the theme here is coming up with is global institutions and multilateralism. And here I think we've got a number of challenges, because a number of the existing proposals for reforms of multilateralism, particularly the multilateral trading system, are not, in fact, in my reading, going to promote inclusivity. They're going to promote more plurilateralism, which the WEF is identifying as one of the problems. So I think we're going to have to grapple with these issues in great detail in the fullness of time, but I've no doubt that we need to prepare ourselves. By the way, one of these indexes that they had last year, they had about 100 and something countries ranked, and I'm sure there'll be another report like this, ranked in order of preparedness for the fourth industrial revolution. And where was South Africa? Well, I mean, countries like Rwanda weren't even in the list. Most of Africa wasn't even in the list. We were 49th, and we were in a category of nascent. Most of us are there in the world. Most of us in the world are there, including countries like Brazil and so on. But actually, we are not very strongly prepared for the fourth industrial revolution. And I don't think they were wrong about that. I think their assessment was pretty fair. So I think that there's let's see where we are this year, but I think there's a number of issues there. I think that's pretty much the issues that were addressed to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. This thing of organizing meetings too early in the morning. You remember when you instructed me to come back to government, I said, this morning things. And you had called me too early in the morning. I said, please don't call me before 9 o'clock in the morning. But you proceeded to do so using your presidential prerogative, I suppose. It's okay. Now, one of the things that I know, and wake up early. I want to underscore and underline what the President said about the South African Reserve Bank, because it's a very important matter. Maria Ramos, Neil Morrison, Trevor Manuel, myself, had huge debates and arguments with the National Party people during the course of the negotiations. And then there was Raymond Parsons, who was making noise on the sides and so on. And eventually we came to a covenant that said that the South African Reserve Bank is an independent institution which pursues its objectives independently without fear or favor, provided that there will be regular consultations between the bank and the minister responsible for national financial matters. It's a covenant. It's an agreement. It's a covenant. But it happens to be a very good covenant. And if you look internationally, you'll find that the outcomes, macroeconomic outcomes in countries with independent central banks are much better than in those countries with non-independent central banks. So we're on a good wicket here, and we must not spoil the game. And I think the president is quite correct to emphasize that point. Let me just give you a sense of what happens in monetary policy decision making. So what then happens is the staff of the bank will prepare a huge amount of documentation covering almost everything: employment, global interest rates, yield curves, growth prospects, forecast for growth, and everything else that matters. And after 2 days of debate involving all of those issues, the Monetary Policy Committee will come to a conclusion about which way interest rates should go. So it will be incorrect to think that the central bank does not take all other factors into consideration. But the political parties are perfectly within their own right to raise issues which they think need to be discussed, issues which maybe they feel that their members need to understand more. That's perfectly correct. And I don't think there's any need to panic about those issues. And the president is correct. A country that debates issues openly is the more richer. And I think that's what we're trying to do. Finally, Mr. President, I think before you go, I've been going to Davos since 1991. And I have a badge given to me by Klaus Schwab, which says longest attendee. So please be careful when you walk on the snow, don't fall. Thank you very much.
Now, this response is consistent and it hasn't changed in a while. Because last week when, and by the way, to get the Minister of Finance, if you call him at 1 a.m. or 2, then you'll have a good conversation. So he gave me the same response as we were deliberating on this and saying, it's very important for us to have one view and understand. And he took me into confidence in terms of what's happening in the Monetary Policy Committee and how growth and employment and other factors are taken into consideration as the decisions are made. So let me have another round. I guess it's going to be our last round. Oh. Yeah. Should we go for the last round? Yeah. Yes. We'll start there, and then Colin, Peter, George, and that side. Yeah.
Thank you, Dondo. I'm Kanyisile Koyama, Brand SA. I should say today I'm Brand SA. My question is really directed to my Minister of Communications as to how we just ensure, we always have this pre-Davos get together. And we then go into Davos and come back and don't continue that same matching. I think 1 year when Minister Godan was Minister of Finance, there was then the burning issue that caused the meeting to happen at Nedbank, and the rest is history. But it was around a specific issue, and I think we've seen the results, but now we are getting into a silly year of electioneering, where almost all the good that happens with these initiatives, with these trips, gets lost because everybody is tearing each other apart, trying to get to the election poll and ensure that you win. And a lot of that is undone. And as Brand South Africa, we always find that challenge of trying to keep everything coherent during that process. and maybe more of a challenge to the Minister of Communications to ensure that somehow we convene post-Davos and do the post-mortem and then say, what are we then going on to say to the country? To give the country the assurance that this is not about a talk shop that just happens out there in Switzerland and does not have an impact on the rest of the population. How is the country going to benefit? How is business going to benefit? And more importantly, how are the people going to benefit from what happened at Davos, from the agreements that were reached, from everything, so that it permeates through to our society? Thanks.
Okay. Can I request that you be short so that we maximize the responses? Mike here. Yeah. Colin, Peter, George, and then we'll go somewhere like that.
Morning. I wanted to make the point that the light that shines on Team South Africa in Davos, that comes off the white snow-capped mountains, depends on the storm clouds or the sun shining in the world. And we know that there's a lot of storm clouds in the world. We saw what happened in Britain last night. Ironically, the financial markets are encouraged, and the pound is strengthened because they think that Brexit is less likely. We have Trump's USA, we have the troubles in the Middle East, we have problems on the continent happening in Kenya right now, in Zimbabwe, in Nigeria we have an election, in South Africa we have an election. And so I think the importance is to give a message that we are on the right, we are facing the right direction. We were somewhat off-piste, to use an expression, some years ago in South Africa, and now under the leadership of President Ramaphosa, the compass is facing sharply north. We're on the right road, and we want to give it a sense that that direction is upward. And that is a very simple message, but I think the combination of the comments here, we need to capture that message in Davos. South Africa is on the right road, we point in the right direction, we have the right leadership. Business is behind the government, and we're in partnering with our social partners, and we're going to deliver South Africa in a positive sense. And from that point of view, invest in South Africa.
Morning, Peter Matlare, ABSA. Morning, sir. One of the themes that's not come out is about inclusive growth. Because if you look at all policy directions, ultimately they coalesce into inclusive growth. And I'm wondering, Mr. President, how we articulate that explicitly, because the challenges we have in our country, in our economy, it's not just about fixing our institutions, which is critical, but that we want to be inclusive in the way in which we define our future. Last year, the Indians were all over in Davos. And I was particularly envious because every Indian businessman, et cetera, made sure they supported each other in all of their events over the two and a half day period. I say that because there are some strong building blocks that we have. We are going to, once again at Davos, talk to our capital markets index, which is one that covers the whole continent by and large, a significant portion of the continent, that we will launch again at Davos and have a seminar around. Now that's about why the South African markets have continued to attract investment. It's the ease of entry. And I've got to say to you, sir, at the IMF meetings in Indonesia and other, where we have done this, we have had central bank governors and others come to us and say, we want to be on that index because it tracks real measures for inclusive growth. The last point I will make is, it gives us all an opportunity to showcase, and you'll come to our pop-up tent, talent and skill that's been developed. So the products we will showcase in our pop-up store, and please, I promise to pour everybody a drink, will really begins to show that inclusive growth is beyond only worrying about large corporations, but having these entrepreneurs who we believe must play an important part in our economy, being part of that. Thank you.
President, I think you have done a great work in the number of few months traveling the world, raising investments for this country, and thank you for that. I think my biggest concern has always been this announcement of 10 billion USD in the Saudi Arabia, 10 billion USD in the UAE, but little have been seen in action post this announcement. And I think this is one big challenge that we have in this country, that as we travel the world doing so much hard work, but then post-delivery is zero. And I want to hear from you what really the plan is, because it's quite very worrying that you have to do such a great work, and through the team and the support of the leaders of this country. But sadly, we don't see the results.
Thank you so much. My name is Emmanuel Gamor. I'm Edukania. I'm at WITS Business School, and I am one of 50 global shapers who've been invited to Davos this year. I am one of only 5 from the continent. And near and dear to our hearts, youthful hearts, is the big topic about the future of work, skills, and what the messaging is that we're presenting as South Africa in addressing that. So we really appreciate what that means and how we can collaborate. This year specifically, there are 2 global shapers who've been announced as co-chairs, and the forum has given a strong indication of allowing young voices to be more impactful and deciding the type of Africa and South Africa we want. So we'd love to have more on the messaging and in which ways we can be deliberate and showcasing that as well. Thank you.
The last one will be a comment. Is there another one? Oh yes, Stephen, you'll be last. Yeah.
Good morning. My name is Tembi Kunene Msimang. I'm acting as Chief Executive at Brand SA. Mr. President, just a short question and comment from you on Brexit and the tremendous victory or loss by Theresa May last night, and what our marching orders are as South Africans at Davos.
Stephen?
Yeah, Mr. President, last year I was the first to open the batting on Eskom. Obviously, I think a lot of progress has been made, not enough. But Peter mentioned the IMF, and I think that I'm not going to even criticize anyone here, because all I'm going to do is say, I think we are, as South Africans, in a much better position than we've been for a long time. And I think we were very stuck. And just to answer George's question, you know, if you read Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, he talks about the flywheel, and the flywheel is very difficult to get moving. But once you get it moving, it starts building its own momentum. So I do think that we're at a point where the flywheel is just moving a little bit, and we have to just keep the momentum going, because it's not about radical. I know we fight all the time about the word radical economic transformation. It is about incrementalism over a long period of time. I've just finished reading a book called Factfulness, and if you read that book, you'll get a very good understanding of exactly what I'm saying is how compounding works over a long period of time. And that if you compound, and I've said this to you before, if we compounded at over 4% from 2010 till 2018, he would have had a surplus. And he could have used that surplus for uplifting those other 10% of our population. They don't have water, they don't have electricity, they don't have all those kind of things, which is really what, to me, inclusive growth is about. So coming off the back of the IMF, I felt that we were, as South Africa, in a different space to where we've been for a long time. And that even people came up to me from other banks in other developing markets. In that book says, don't call them developing markets, because that's not what they are. But said, you know, you guys can talk very directly to your politicians. You can talk truth to power. We can't do that in India. And I think we can be proud as South Africans that we are able to have the dialogue that the minister was talking about. You know, I go mad when Oak score own goals on Rosebank, but still, I think, you know, George's point, yes, it's going to come, George, if we keep doing the right things for a long period of time. So I think well done, Mr. President, to you and your team. I think we've made a lot of progress. I know the world is in a funny space. A lady from Brand South Africa was asking about Brexit. Well, you know, I can talk about Brexit because we've had to close our Irish branch and do all sorts of things in Europe to actually navigate this thing where you leave technocratic decisions to the general populace. People didn't even know what they were voting for. And that's why we saw this They thought it was nice to be away from the Europeans. And it was the rich and the poor who voted for Brexit, not the middle ground. So that's all. I know I'm rambling, but sorry, Mr. President. Well done, and I think we just got to keep this flywheel turning. We've made great progress this last year.
Thank you, Mr. President. The floor is yours. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Let's give the President the last opportunity to respond, and then we can call it quits.
Careful what you ask for, because you may get it, especially when Stephen has to answer on Brexit. Just picking up on the earlier questions, I will say a few words, and I'm going to ask Minister Stellanda Bene-Abrams, she's still here, to say a few words on the work that we're doing on 4.0 tech and the fourth industrial revolution, and also ask Minister Davies if you really care to hear more than what Stephen has said about Brexit, because he is our local expert, apart from Stephen, on Brexit. Maybe just picking up, and a few things have already been addressed on what Sim Chabalala said about the ease of doing business and our standing globally. We're not well positioned, and there are quite a number of reasons why we're not well positioned, and we do need to get positioned better than where we are. Minister Davies addressed it, and ease of doing business touches on a whole range of things, the permitting process, and many others, particularly where businesses interface, say, with government, where government is slow in moving and doing a whole range of things. Now, what I would really like to see is to bring down the number of days that people have to wait for permits, for allowance, to be allowed to do certain things. I had to wait for more than 2 years just to get a plan approved to build a little room at the gate of my house. And I was astounded at this. And I said, why should it take so long? And it then made me feel very strong about issuing a directive right across government that half the time that it takes for any permit, any permission to be done for everyone, every civil servant must now be wide awake and get things done quicker, faster, and simpler. I still go back to this. You remember. So, basically, it makes a lot of logic that we should be able, particularly for doing business, we should be able to do things a lot quicker. And it is for that reason that I spent quite a bit of time when I addressed a meeting the other day on what civil servants should do, because that's where the blockage is. And we need to move that paper across our desks much quicker so that we remove the bureaucratic clutter that impedes businesses to operate efficiently. And with that, Sim, I think once we can address that, together with the work that we are doing with the World Bank, as Minister Davies said, we should be able to get a better ranking on the ease of doing business. And we should also be learning from what other countries are doing, small countries like Rwanda. They have been able to remove the logjam that is given rise to when people want to start businesses and to operate their businesses. And I would like to see that being cut down, and I want to focus more attention on that, because there's nothing that is more debilitating for businesses to operate than just finding that there's too much bureaucratic logjams that one is subjected to. What Maria and Abigail said, I think that is almost the line of march that we should all have. Because the real story is, and as a number of you have also said, we are in a much better place than we have been in a long time, as Stephen Kosef was also saying. And that is the message that we need to project, to say, South Africa, there is this wonderful light that is shining on us, as Abigail has said, and this is the light that should showcase precisely what we are. We've made tremendous progress, and we continue to make progress on every aspect. Stephen is repeating precisely what I said earlier. There aren't many countries where government is as accessible as we are. In our country, business, labor, communities find us much more accessible, and we're also setting up functional structures to be able to enrich the collaboration between ourselves as government and business, and indeed labor as well. So on that score, I think we can say that we are doing extremely well. And Colin is right. We are on the right track in spite of what is also happening in other parts of the world. We are well positioned, and I think we are well primed, George, to also be able to capture the benefits of, yes, inclusive growth. What is this inclusive growth that Peter is also talking about? It really, the world is in a process of interrogating what inclusive growth is. And I think we are really having a good grasp of it. Inclusive growth must mean that all the people of our country must see the benefits of the economic growth that we want to engender. But more importantly, they must also participate. They must not be left behind. And it is for this reason that these empowerment processes, these transformation processes are so important, because we've got a very vocal community base throughout the country. People no longer want to be treated as dummies, as not having a voice. So in the end, the benefit is that they want to be included. And there's nothing as good as including people in whatever we do. Even if you are going to set up a mine in some remote part of the country, there are always people there, and they will say, we want to be included. Craft a way of including us so that we too can benefit from what you're going to do. So it is no longer like in the past, where the growth that was generated in the form of profits by companies only ascribed to shareholders and to some extent to government through taxes. It has to be, all-encompassing. The local people also have to benefit. You cannot even begin to, say, grow your company to the exclusion of the key role players within the society or the community where your company operates. So, Peter, the wonderful thing is that you are going to release this index, and I think what you are essentially saying is, let us support one another. And when we are in Davos, you say it's a pop-up tent or whatever it is. We go there and we go and support one of our companies that's putting up an index of this type, because in that way we are all included as South Africans to be part of a wonderful thing that has been engendered by one of our companies. Emmanuel, you want to talk, you focusing on the future of work. Prior to going to Davos, I will be going to the ILO, where we are going to release the report on the future of work, where I've been participating as co-chair together with the Prime Minister of Sweden. I don't know whether he's still in that position, but Prime Minister Loffen and I have been chairing this commission on the future of work. We're going to be inviting the world, as the World Bank also did recently, to begin to grapple with what the future of work is in the light of the fourth industrial revolution, the technological and digital changes that have engulfed the world. Now, as I'm going to ask Minister Stella Ndabeni-Abrams to come to answer. She may do so where she's sitting, to talk about the fourth industrial revolution. One of the areas of great focus that we now want to put forward is our preparedness for the fourth industrial revolution. Minister Davis says we are, much as we are 49th, which people could say, okay, you're not as bad as others, but we're still way behind. We're light years behind. And we now need to leapfrog. We now need to go much faster forward to address the challenges of the fourth industrial revolution. When I went a few years ago, 3 years ago, to Mexico, I met some Canadian people who were saying, you're talking about the digital revolution in Canada. We're already teaching children to do coding at age 2. And we are nowhere there. And it's now our education department is now going to begin the experimentation work. And I'm saying we should no longer experiment, we should teach our teachers or train our teachers to begin to teach coding at a very early age, even begin to do it at early childhood development, because countries that are going to perform well in the industrial revolution, the fourth industrial revolution, have already started preparing their young people when it comes to that. So yes, we want to begin to, our young people must grapple with the type of future and the type of Africa they want. But I would like them to begin to define the type of South Africa that they want. And for me, it's a big challenge for young people, and that is why we want to focus on young people, what they should be doing, and their preparedness. Fortunately, a number of companies are actually saying, we need to know what government expects us to do, because we would like to participate and to play this in this space in a big way. So colleagues, I think the messages that are clear have been better articulated by yourselves as business people. What Maria said, Abigail and Peter and Stephen and all of you, and Colin as well, is quite clear that we are on the right track. We have had to deal with very difficult challenges in the past, but those challenges we are finding solutions for. And I think at Davos, all of us must put our best foot forward. We must go and engage with the world. That is the investing world. We must go and pump flesh and shake hands with great confidence, knowing that we're representing this great country. And I think we are on the cusp of something that's really great. And I think we're going to start seeing the increased growth of our economy. And I think we should not cower down. We should go there, hold our heads high, without being arrogant. We should tell our story and what we have done, how much we've made progress, and also outline precisely those issues that we said last year we would address. Because when we were there, we told the world that this is the new dawn. We've turned a corner, and we said to the world, watch us. Watch this space as we begin to grapple with all the challenges that we've had. And we enumerated quite a number of those. And we can confidently go back and say, we told you that we are going to do A, B, C, D, and this is precisely what we've done. We've held a number of wonderful initiatives, if you like, or interventions or conferences, the Jobs Summit and even the Health Summit, including the Gender Summit, the Investment Conference, and many of those have been hugely positive, and they have better positioned our country, and I think we are on a roll. So as I often say, we are like a plane that's about to take off. And the good thing is that all of us have participated in preparing this plane to take off. We've all been in the space, make sure that it's properly oiled and cleaned and fueled, and this is the plane that is about to take off. And the other good thing is that you're all pilots of this plane. It's not only one person who is a pilot. I can look at each one of you and say, we're all co-pilots, and let's make this plane fly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ministers, business leaders, ladies and gentlemen, and members of the media, good morning. Here is your Black Friday gift. Buy one, get one for free. President has already spoken to some of the issues in relation to South Africa's readiness for the 4IR. I will be specific on certain things that at least will give you comfort to say, indeed, as government, we're not relaxing. We are making sure that we will build a capable army that indeed will be able to face the revolution we're talking about. One of the key interventions, as the President announced last year, was the establishment of the 4IR Commission, which seeks to make sure that it's going to coordinate the development of a national strategy and action plans in order to maximize the benefits of the ecosystem of the 4IR. Already we have called for nominations. We are finalizing shortlisting, and we will present the names to the President, and sooner he will be making that announcement. Taking it further, we had to make sure that after we hosted the ITU conference in Durban, one of the legacy projects that we committed to was the establishment of the 4IR Center. This therefore means that we've got to give an opportunity for innovation by the small businesses and the big companies to make sure that they can work together in taking South Africa forward in terms of manufacturing, innovation, testing, and everything that needs to be done. Of course, we are in talks with the ITU and WEF in relation to this, and of course, plans are at an advanced stage. Rob, we are trying to fast-track the processes of switching off analog in terms of the DTT, because I'm sure people are like, when is this girl going to conclude this process of digital migration? It has been there. We are trying to engage. We spent the first month making sure that at least we're able to engage with the industry, started with the 12 entities that we have, the 3 departments that are under our ministry, to make sure that there's cohesion and the same understanding of the vision that we want to build for the new department that the President will rename soon. We can't remain Department of Communications in this era. We are trying to fast-track the process of DTT because we know that everybody, as the President announced again, when we hosted the investment summit and in the ITU conference in Durban, that we are working towards making sure that we license the spectrum. That's what Rob wants to hear. And we do promise that we will not disappoint the President. We will do everything, even if it means that we work Saturdays, Sundays, up to 4 a.m., but that commitment that he has made has to be realized. He made an important point, that we're a government that believes in engaging, and therefore it is important that even in those areas that we are disagreeing on, we then try to find consensus. Of course, it doesn't mean that we'll make everybody happy, but that has to be done, has to be done. As we talk of the licensing of the spectrum again, we cannot leave behind the issues of obligations. To date, we still talk about the people that are not connected, and it becomes our responsibility to make sure that as we bring investors, to make sure that as we license spectrum to those that will be getting the spectrum, those obligations are realized and indeed are detailed in the obligations, that people must be able to have access to education and health services, and that's where we will not compromise. We're also talking about fiber that must also be deployed on to underserviced areas. Earlier on, I said we are ready to build a capable 4IR army, which is something that we can never achieve if we are not putting people at the center. Everybody talks about technologies, but these technologies are not here to dictate what must happen in our lives. These are technologies that must find expression within how we live as people. And as part of doing that, we had declared last year in our budget vote that we will be training about 1 million people on data science, robotics, and other related skills in terms of the 4IR, cloud computing, artificial intelligence. We further then said there is a need for us to establish a 4IR skills forum, whereby we brought in government, private sector, the industry, including those that require training. And we agree that there's a need for us to emphasize the need to coordinate in order to collaborate for effective collaboration, and that's our mantra. We coordinate, collaborate, and execute. And that's how we plan to do things, because it is through the skilling of the nation that will be able to realize the economic spin-offs that will be brought by the 4IR, but at the same time, that will be able to allay fears from those that see these technologies that are coming to take over their jobs. We have to reskill, and that's the focus of what we will be doing. We then again commissioned a digital skills gap analysis, which, as President made mention, he was talking about coding that must be introduced at primary level. Indeed, that was realized when we got the findings of the study that we commissioned, that if we don't build capacity when they're young, we'll be missing out on the great impact that they can make in terms of innovation. So we are working with the Department of Education in ensuring that through the industry, again, we're able to connect certain schools building digital classrooms with a digitized content. But most importantly, we had managed via other operators to establish the teacher training centers to make sure that teachers are ready. And as we'll be marching towards the new department again, one of the focus things is to make sure that we turn around NEMISA, which is a training institute under the Department of Communications, a training institute that must be there to train firstly for the department. And like I said, there's a need for policy shift. Everything that we've been doing in the past was in relation or response to voice. And if we are talking about 4IR, we're talking everything data. And therefore, there must be skills within the department in order for it to be able to provide that leadership to the country, regulations that have to be changed, legislations, and policies that must therefore respond to the data challenges that we are facing today. In a way of ensuring that we get everybody to be involved, because 4IR is not about just ICTs in terms of our space. We will be hosting a digital economy summit together with UJ, with VETS, with Forte, and we are working with some of our stakeholders to make sure that we get sponsorships, Mr. President, because Minister Mboweni has made it clear that he doesn't have any money to give to the beautiful ladies talking here. And as I said, in the Digital Economy Summit, it's going to be cutting across your energy, because we can't be talking 4IR without energy. The kind of energy mix that we require in order for this artificial intelligence and everything that we are introducing is very important. When you go to the agricultural sector, they also affected. Everybody, automobile sector, mining, and transport. These are the key sectors that we need to sit down, have a dialogue as the nation to say, how are we going to chart our way forward? I did say that the Commission will help us in terms of developing that national plan, but there must be a response by sectors to say, how are we going to get the plan realized in order for South Africa to be successful in the 4IR revolution. We are not opposing because of this. As the department, we're continuing to roll out broadband via SA Connect, and we thank the operators also that have made it a point that they do invest in that sector, although we still say there's more that needs to be done. Minister Mboweni, we need more money because everybody must be equal in the space of internet, and as we seek to digitize education, it means that for every child in our country must have access to it, and that means more money, more investment that is required for the sector. And as we're talking about schools again, e-government services are very crucial, which are crucial to the plan that we're driving in terms of SA Connect. Via CETA, we have already started, and we are pleased to announce that most departments are responding so well, and as a result, we'll be establishing the e-services portal as a one-stop delivery platform for the e-government services. Ladies and gentlemen, fundamental in the drive towards the digital economy and the 4IR is putting people at the center. It must be about how people use technologies to solve their own problems, be they social or economic. Technological and market developments must respond to the needs, the aspirations, and expectations of our people. In particular, young people should not be just consumers, but be mobilized and enabled to create these technologies and participate in the entire ecosystem of the digital economy. Let me tell you that that is what we have for now, and we will come back and talk to the nation about further developments. Thank you so much.
So from me, it'll be a very brief comment on Brexit. I just want to say that I think the dominant comment I've heard from everybody who's commented on what happened in the British Parliament last night was that the British Parliament indicated what it doesn't want, but it didn't indicate what it wants. And I think we know that there are a number of different views, and that means that there are a number of different scenarios which go from the one which Colin tells us that the markets are seeming to think is likely, that there won't be any Brexit, to there being a Brexit without any agreement, which is called a hard Brexit. Any of those are possible. Now, I think that as a country, as South Africa, that means we've got to prepare ourselves for any of those scenarios and do what we can to ensure that there's the minimum of disruption, given that Britain is actually our second largest trading partner in the European Union as it's currently constituted. There are things that will happen as a result of Brexit, whatever scenario unfolds, that we can't deal with. And those will be, if Britain goes into a recession, what's that going to mean for global growth? What's it going to mean for the financial sector, the City of London? What's it going to mean for relations between companies that were based in London, now may be based elsewhere? But the one thing that we can do is to ensure that there's no interruption in our trade, and that we've been working on that for quite a while. I had a meeting that we've practically finished the agreement that is between the members of the Southern African Customs Union plus Mozambique, which were the parties to the Economic Partnership Agreement with the EU. And the basic agreement will be that we will have a parallel agreement with the British. We've already worked out the tariff quotas on our agricultural products, which are actually pretty good, on things like wine and fruits and all of those kind of things. Because if we didn't have an agreement, the MFN arrangement for those products is not particularly generous. It'd be quite difficult for those products. The outstanding issue is accumulation. I had in December, I had a meeting with the Minister of State that's deployed on this file, and we agreed on the political parameters of the finalization. There's a technical meeting taking place this week. I sincerely hope it's the last one. And then we have to have a joint meeting of ministers of the entire group and hopefully conclude this thing well in time to make sure that whatever of the scenarios unfolds, at least on the trade front, South Africa is able to ensure that there is continuity. I think that ought to be part of our message as well, that we have been proactively trying to ensure that whatever scenario unfolds, we won't be adversely affected, at least in the trade front, and at least on the issues that we can have some influence on. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ministers, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of our breakfast session, so I think we'll just wait for the President to take leave. Can I request that all of you remain seated as the President exit the building, and just as the President is leaving, Minister Mboweni told me that the beautiful lady will only get money when the dollar signs in my eyes have turned into reality through spectrum release. So, yeah.